What is up? What is going on, everybody? You know what time it is. The Seattle Mariners post-game recaps are back, and what a way to start the season. Mariners didn't ease us into this season, did they? They didn't go and win a 7-0 game or 1-0 behind Logan Gilbert. They had to have the ultimate chaos ball game. We had a great start from a starting pitcher. We had some weird base running. We had some weird bunting. And then we had a wild eighth inning to cap off the first Mariners win of the season. Welcome back into the channel, everybody. And here we go. The post-game recaps are back. Obviously, I do some off-season videos, but this really is the bread and butter for me. I guess what I'd be known for doing the post-game recaps. Before I do dive into the game, first and foremost, I want to thank all of you that are subscribers or that like the video or comment or even just watch. Watching the video does help out the channel tremendously. All the kind messages I get from people just telling me, like, oh, I can't wait for the recaps to be back. I'm not doing that to toot my own horn or anything like that, but it really does mean a lot to me and my family. It really does. It is so cool that people are actually looking forward to these. If you guys can do me a favor, smash the like button. It helps get the video out to more people. Don't hesitate to comment your thoughts on this team or this game down below. And if you're new here, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It also helps out tremendously. My goal is to reach 5,000 subs this season. Would love to get there. Just be a huge milestone for my channel. So if you can, go ahead and hit the sub button, or even if you're just kind of lurking and watch, if you can, just hit subscribe. It really does help out my channel tremendously. Baseball is back. I mean, isn't that just cool that baseball is back? We'll get into the Mariners because, again, chaos for game one. But Major League Baseball is back. Just makes this such a fun day. I will still say this should be a holiday. And then tomorrow's Friday, so you might as well just have the long weekend, right? Take Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But Major League Baseball is back. And what I love about it, I always say it's one of my favorite things about baseball being back, not only for the Mariners, but I get off work on Tuesday. Maybe I get off early or something. It's 3:30. Oh, I can put on the Pirates and the Reds are on. It's just every day to me, my favorite sport, baseball, is on TV, even if it's not the Mariners. So, or going to a ballpark too. I mean, there's nothing better than a day at the ballpark. So just so pumped that baseball has returned. And boy, like I said, the Mariners didn't waste any time. Tons to talk about in this game. Usually opening day, I just kind of focus on hey, don't read too much into it. It's one game. We shouldn't overreact to bad. And that was kind of what I was going to go with this game, is the Mariners were losing 1-0, getting shut down by Luis Severino. Tyler Soderstrom was killing the Mariners. And there were some weird decisions. I'm going to get all that, but it was kind of just going to be a, hey, listen, it looked like every Mariners loss we've ever seen. That's what it was going to look like, where the team just gets great pitching, but can't do enough offensively. But you can't draw too much from one game. That was going to be the focus of my of the post-game recap. And not that means that the Mariners are guaranteed to bounce back, but one game shouldn't tell you everything. It doesn't tell you everything about a team's season, obviously. But then the Mariners rally in the eighth inning against Jose Leclerc, and thank goodness they did, because Mason Miller was coming up in the ninth inning, and it likely would have been against the bottom of the order. And it would have been a very, very tough comeback for the Mariners, but they find a way to pull it out. Randy Arozarena gets the huge solo home run off Leclerc to tie it up in the eighth inning. Upper deck shot, just absolutely crushed. He knew it right away. Love seeing Randy, his celebration, throwing the bat, run around the bases. I love the energy. They need it, right? I think it's good for this team. I think they need to have that sort of, I don't want to say it's not an arrogance or a cockiness, but just kind of a pep in the step. Have fun with it. I want a team that's out there that wants to be at the ballpark every day. And Randy gives off those kind of vibes, and that was great to see. Then how about Jorge Polanco with that 2-run home run? As I just said, don't put too much stock into one game. I'm kind of on the Jorge Polanco is back train. He looked great in spring training. The strikeouts were down. He looked dialed in today. He was the only one that really seemed dialed in against Severino. I'll talk about the bunt. That was a little weird. And then hits the 2-run home run to dead center field off Leclerc. Listen, I'm not sure if Rowdy Tellez is going to be good or contribute much. I don't know how good Ryan Bliss is going to be as an everyday player. I don't know if JP Garver will bounce back. I think some of these things will happen. I feel pretty confident Jorge Polanco is going to be good. Now, I don't know where that's going to fall on the good scale, but I'm pretty confident we're getting 2023 at least Jorge Polanco. I am buying that he was hurt last year, and that was the reason for the poor season. Now, there's still going to be questions about the defense at third. I think he only had to make one throw tonight, and it was kind of a bit of a lollipop throw. So that could be an issue. But offensively, I'm pretty much bought into Jorge Polanco is going to have a bounce back season this year. So what a fun game to start the season. I don't know if I can do these post-game recaps always end up the same. The Mariners play the same game, right? Great starting pitching, offense struggles. Sometimes they pull it out late, sometimes they don't. And then I sit there and tell you guys how I cannot do 161 more of these for the rest of the season. Hopefully there'll be some games that'll be a little bit easier. Even in a loss, there'll be some games that won't be as stressful for sure. But just great to have baseball back in general. Let's dive into it. Let's pull up the box score here. Logan Gilbert, we'll start with the pitching. 7 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 1 earned, no walks, 8 Ks. Absolutely fantastic start from Logan Gilbert. His first opening day start as a Seattle Mariner, and he was fantastic against an A's offense that does have some guys in it. This is a much better athletics team. I'm going to try not to say Oakland. I still feel gutted for those fans. I spent a lot of time in the Bay Area, went to a lot of games there. I know if you guys have been on my channel, you've heard me say that, but really gutted for them. And even though the Coliseum, yeah, kind of a dump, let's be honest, but I had some good times at the Coliseum, went to a lot of Mariners A's games there, and it did have a lot of character for sure. So really do feel for those fans. But listen, is it a lineup that's going to set the world on fire? No, but Lawrence Butler is a really good player. Brent Rooker is one of the more underrated hitters. Butler's one of the more underrated hitters in the AL. Bladay's good. Some good young guys with Muncy and Wilson at the bottom of the lineup. Wilson, great at putting bat to ball. Soderstrom had a great game today with 2 home runs. And Duhar can do some things. Like, it's not a terrible lineup. And Logan looked fantastic tonight. You're always a little bit worried game one. How deep is the guy going to go into the game? Number one. Managers like to be careful, and it makes sense, right? Like, guys are still getting out of spring training, still getting used to throwing more than 70, 75 pitches. So sometimes it's, not shocking to see a 4 or 5 inning opening day start. But Logan able to go deep in the game. Velocity looked good. The splitter looked fantastic. First pitch strikes galore. A little bit of a scare there in the 3rd inning. Logan was hit on the rear by a line drive. I forgot who hit the line drive. It might have been Soderstrom. Correct me if I'm wrong. Or might have been, and Langoliers, another guy that's actually a pretty decent hitter too and a good catcher. Might have been Langoliers. I'm not sure. Luckily, it got Logan in a meaty part of the body, but Bizzardo was getting loose. And, obviously, first game of the year, you want to be careful, right? If there's any inkling that Logan might be a little off, it's not a bad idea to turn it over to the bullpen at that point. You're better off missing a few innings in April versus something lingering down the line and missing some starts in June or July when we start getting into the dog days. So I would have absolutely understood if Logan had to come out of the game, but he was able to stay in, and he was grimacing a lot when he went back out for that 4th inning, but got back dialed in. It may have just been a little sore and took him a little time, but Logan was fantastic. And how many pitches? Logan threw only 83 and 60 strikes. So you could even make the case Logan could have gone 8 innings tonight. I'm really, one thing I'm really going to do this year, and it's not, if managerial decisions are wrong, I will call them out. I will. I did it last year, but I was kind of always a Scott Service defender. My issue with Scott was it just got to the point where it felt like the clubhouse may have been lost a little bit. And when that happens, it's time for new leadership. If the Mariners don't make the playoffs this year, it's going to be because ownership and front office didn't make the proper moves. Or the players didn't perform. I don't think it's going to be because Dan made some iffy moves. Maybe I'm wrong on that. That's just my opinion. Disagree. Totally fine. There's a lot of different ways to win and lose baseball games. Trust me, as a Mariners fans, we've seen tons of different ways to lose baseball games over our time. But, could Logan have gone out there for 8? Maybe. I don't know. Like, it's opening day. He was at 83. You send him out there for 8, gets a little trouble. He could easily get up over 100 pitches quickly. He leaves on a good note. He did have the line drive, so it may just been like, hey, let's not push it on opening day for sure. So no problem with it. Trent Thornton comes in after Logan Gilbert again. And here I say, I'm not going to question it too much. The reason I said that about Dan is because I did think Thornton was a little bit of an iffy decision there. Because you had Soderstrom, who hits righties pretty well. And then you had the bottom of the lineup. After Soderstrom, you have, let's see, it was Soderstrom and then Urshela and Muncy and Wilson. So you've got three righties that aren't exactly like the big boppers in the lineup. So it might have made more sense to go to a Gabe Spire there or a Taylor Saucedo. Here's what I will say, though, or even Gregory Santos, maybe, who's, a good right-handed pitcher. We hope this year if he can be back to what he was in 23 in Chicago. Here's the thing I will say. Remember this as we get overly critical and things of managerial decisions. And Thornton doesn't pitch well against lefties, which is true. I'm not saying that's certainly not his strength, but Thornton was pretty good last year. Is he a Matt Brash Munoz type? No, he's not. But he's fine. He's a perfectly acceptable, middle to late inning reliever. If you look around the league, the Mariners have been very fortunate to have some good arms in the bullpen. There'd be some teams that would love a Trent Thornton on the back end. And Gabe Spire was not very good last year, and his velocity was down. It's looked good in spring, so you think I think he'll bounce back. And, Gregory Santos was not healthy last year and wasn't great when he pitched in the minimal innings last year as well. So just take all that into consideration before we all jump on Dan and go, how could you go to Trent Thornton in that spot? It's not as easy as it looks. There are other things. There's reasons to be, a little shaky on Santos. There's might be a reason to be a little shaky on Spire and Saucedo. I will say the bullpen does have me a little nervous. It is something I think the Mariners have to kind of get their way through until Matt Brash is ready. I wouldn't mind adding another reliever at some point here, whether it's a trade or you can get like a David Robertson, who I think is still a free agent, maybe get it dirt cheap and bring him in here, a little veteran presence, kind of like they did with Stanek last year. And up until his departure, Stanek did a pretty nice job, at least holding down the fort for the Mariners. So I am a little bit nervous about the bullpen as a whole. We'll see. The key is going to be, do you have Gabe Spire of 23? Do you have Santos of 23? Is Sauce maybe even closer to 23 as well? If you and Brash coming back healthy, and Snyder repeating last year, it's a lot I just went through there. If you can get all that, I do feel like you can have a pretty solid bullpen for sure. But there is some questions down there. But I just want to get that out of the way. I didn't have a huge problem with it, and there's 162 of these. I'm not going to spend all 162 breaking down small managerial decisions. I will talk about them, but at the end of the day, like, Mariners got the W, and that is all that matters when it's said and done. And then Munoz comes in the ninth, locks down the save, does walk Lawrence Butler to start the ninth, but strikes out Brent Rooker, and then gets, I believe it was Blade on the double play. Nice play by JP, tags Butler, and gets Blade out at first. So a great way to end it. Nice play by JP Crawford there, and nice job by Munoz. The walk was a little frustrating because he got ahead of Butler, but he threw the slider 3-2. It just had a little bit too much, a little too low, just bit down a little bit too much. It gets set up a little bit. I think Butler probably swings over the top of it and you get that strikeout. And then he looked fantastic against Brent Rooker. So good to see Munoz come in and close it down. We can debate Trent Thornton in the eighth. No debating, you go to Andres Munoz in the ninth. So good to see Munoz finish off, especially if Munoz is facing the top of the order there, which is where you want him against the A's, especially because, like I said, they do have a pretty good top of the lineup. Let's talk about the offense a little bit for the Mariners tonight. Kind of very similar to last year, right? And I do think it's going to be somewhat similar. The key for me with this team is the consistency, right? Like, the offense ended up finishing, I don't know exactly, but I think top 12 in WRC plus in baseball last year. But it was just, and I've said this 1,000 times in videos this offseason, but it was just so hit or miss. It was a month of 23rd, a month of third. Like September, they're the best offense in baseball. But in other months, they're 25th or 26th. They just have to find that middle ground a little bit. If they're off, which you're going to happen, right? You're going to have months where you're just not as good, whether it's offense, pitching, or just as a team as a whole, or players individually. But just hoping it doesn't dive down to where you're bottom of the barrel. Can your bad month be your 18th in WRC plus? And WRC plus isn't everything either. Like, you need to score runs, obviously, to make it happen. But, finding, again, even for runs scored, if you want to use that as well, obviously, like finding that sort of ground where they just don't drop off. And tonight's kind of a good example of it, right? Like, was the offense good? They had some walks against Severino. They put some base runners on, didn't really get the big hit. They had that weird seventh inning. I'll talk about that. Then the weird Polanco bunt. But then they get to a pitcher in Leclerc who I think is good but hittable. And the Mariners, I feel like, have had good success against him. And they bust out the long ball, which they can do. And Randy goes deep and Polanco goes deep, and they end up getting 4 runs, which when you have Logan Gilbert going 7 innings and then another ending covered by Andres Munoz, you're probably going to win a lot of those games. So it's, again, kind of what they need, right? It wasn't perfect, but they did enough to get Severino out after 6, didn't let him go 7 or 8, where the A's can just easily turn it over to Mason Miller. And you got to a reliever that I think is hittable. So, do I want the offense to put up more runs early? Of course. Was there some weird stuff? Yes. But overall, kind of the recipe for how the Mariners are going to win some baseball games this year. If this team is going to get to where we hope they can get to the playoffs and compete for the AL West, this is how they're going to win games. It might not be 3 runs in the 8th inning necessarily, but it's going to kind of be like that. Cal runs into one. Julio, Randy, Polanco, Garver, Raley. They're going to work their walks. They've got some good patient hitters that are going to find their way on base. And you just hope that those walks that they didn't score on early in the game do lead to runs as we go forward. And they will, right? You keep getting base runners, eventually you will. It's like football. If you keep moving the football, picking up first downs, that's a good sign. So, keep working the walks, keep getting on base, and eventually someone's going to drop one in or drop a ball into the gap, and you're going to score some runs. Now, will this offense be good? I think it can. I do think, if you look around baseball, I was looking at the Yankees lineups with Mariner Sir, my co-host, who I'm hoping will be on for some post-game recaps here as we go along. We were kind of looking at the Yankees lineup, and we're like, it's not that great. You have Aaron Judge, that changes a lot, but there are a lot of lineups, if you look around baseball, that are kind of meh. And I don't think the Mariners have the best lineup in baseball by any means, but I don't think it's crazy that this offense ends up being good this season. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for this to be a pretty decent offense. Do I think it'll be streaky? Yes, I think it will have its moments, but you just can't let it nosedive, essentially. So let's look into the offensive box score. I apologize if the screen goes dark when I do this. I'm pulling up the box score on my computer. That's why the light isn't as good when I do that. Victor Robles, 0 for 3, did have the RBI. I actually thought his sac fly was a great at-bat. So what happened in that 7th inning, you had Bliss walk and JP walk. Robles squares around a bunt, which I'm more okay with that bunt than I was the Polanco one. And the ball just goes right underneath Robles' bat and past Langoliers' glove. Bliss round second, scores. It looks like he scores. Turns out he did not touch home plate. Probably just a coaching thing. Got to get that foot down a little bit. Tough play, though. Probably just one of those fluky things where the foot just didn't touch. We see it. You're going to see that 3 or 4 more times this season. Not a guy missing a bunt and coming around, but just a slide where a guy doesn't get in. Bliss is out at third. And with that, JP went to third and Victor was down 0-2. That's an obvious strikeout situation. And Robles, bunting twice, got in that 0-2 hole, did a nice job to lift that ball to the outfield and get the sacrifice fly. I thought that was, it's going to be forgotten, but I thought that was actually a really underrated at-bat in this game. Now, the 2 missed bunts kind of stink, but that sac fly was a real nice job by Robles there. Julio, 0 for 3, did work a walk. Probably could have had 2 walks. He swung at ball 4 in his first at-bat. Obviously, first game, probably trying to do a little bit too much. So I can't read too much into a box score game 1 with the offense, right? Probably something you should look at more after a month. I always say that too. I usually give everybody a month. Then at the end of April, I'll kind of look and go, okay, how are the guys doing? Who's overperforming, underperforming? Who needs to be better? Who's going to take a step back? So just remember that when I go through the box score, I'm just talking about the game. I'm not trying to make some broad statement about everything. Julio's 0 for 3. Everybody's going to have 0 for 3s this year. Everyone's going to have 0 for 4s. And some guys will have 4 for 4s and 5 for 5s this year. So don't read too much into a first game box score or one game in general. Cal was 0 for 3 with a walk. Randy, great game, 1 for 3 with a walk and the huge home run, absolutely crushed. Like I said, just loved Randy's reaction to the home run, getting the crowd fired up, and I think that did help the team get energized for the rest of that game and finish it off. So that was great to see. And listen, that was with an out. Cal had struck out against Leclerc. Randy makes an out there, unless Luke runs into one, probably game over. Because very unlikely you're not getting a run off Mason Miller, especially with the bottom of the order coming up. Although Polanco had a real nice game, so maybe some hope there. But more than likely, probably good night if Randy doesn't come back there. And I think he had 2 strikes on him as well. So just an absolute mammoth home run. Listen, I don't, I know the front office has kind of tried to sell Randy as an offseason acquisition a little bit. It's not, right? They got him at the deadline last year. It was an offseason acquisition. But I do think some people are forgetting a full year of Randy in this lineup is a big deal. He was here for what, maybe 60, 65 games last year. I don't know exactly when the trade deadline is and how many games you're at. Somewhere in that range, probably, right? And now you have him for 162 this season. That is a big deal. It's not an offseason acquisition, but it is something when you're talking about how did this team get better. Last year, remember, they ran out Mitch Haniger and Dom Canzone in the outfield on opening day. Now, at the time, it didn't sound crazy, but now you're getting Victor Robles, who you hope can repeat last season, and Randy Arozarena in the outfield versus Canzone and Haniger. That is a fairly substantial upgrade from what you ran out opening day last season. So great start from Randy. Luke Raley, 1 for 3 with a walk. The one was kind of a bloop, but he also had a solid line drive that I want to say it was Soderstrom. Boy, Soderstrom was everywhere for the A's tonight. Robbed him on. So, perfect example of no pictures in the box score, right? Sometimes the bloops fall in, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the line drives are caught, sometimes they're not. So it kind of balances out. Luke Raley reaches base twice today. Great game from Jorge Polanco, 3 for 3, 2 singles and the 2-run home run. He had the only couple hits off Severino. I thought Severino threw the ball well. Credit where credit's due. Another thing with opening day too, remember, you're facing every team's best pitcher, more than likely, barring injuries. So it's not the craziest thing that the offense just didn't explode. Luis Severino is good. Now, do I think they could have gotten a couple runs off him? Yeah, his control wasn't great. I think he had 4 walks over 6 innings. So I do think there was some opportunity to put some runs on the board, but he deserves credit too. He was solid. That pitch he threw Rowdy Tellez in the bottom of the 6th to strike him out, just a perfect pitch. Nothing you can do with that. So Severino does deserve credit as well. The A's rotation, I'm not sold on it. Like, I don't think it's going to be enough, but there's some sneaky good arms in that rotation. Severino, who we saw tonight, is good. Jeffrey Springs, if healthy, is a good lefty. He'll go tomorrow. JP Sears will pitch game 3 or game 4. Again, a superstar, no, but a sneaky back end guy. Is it Badu? Is that I'm butchering? It's going to drive me nuts now. But he'll go game 3. He can be really solid as well. So the A's rotation has some guys in there. Again, it's not. I don't think it's Seattle Mariners level good, obviously, to the point where I don't even know if any of those guys would crack the Mariners rotation. Not trying to listen, we got to brag where we can brag as Mariners fans. But it's not a bad rotation either. And, we're not at the point in the season, obviously, where you're getting like these 4A guys coming up or these random, kind of no-namers that are just getting a spot start or two. So, I wouldn't get on the offense too much again. I thought Severino threw the ball well for the A's tonight. So Polanco, great game. The bunt was weird. So in the bottom of the 6th, was it the 6th? Yeah, with 2 on and 1 out, Polanco bunted. Now, they asked him in the postgame, I don't know what Dan Wilson said about Polanco, kind of implied he decided to do that, which makes sense because I can't imagine even the most old school thinking, and I'm not like anti-old school or anything like that, but I don't even think like the most hardened bunting manager from the 40s or 50s is bunting with 1 out and runners at first and second. With a hitter, was the only hitter at the time to get a hit off Severino in the game. So Polanco said he thought he could kind of, saw the third baseman, who I think was it Wilson for the A's? Third base was Urshela, playing back a little bit and just thought he could do it. He showed bunt on the first pitch. Maybe it would have worked if he didn't show bunt initially and then tried to bunt on the third pitch, where he ended up essentially having a sacrifice bunt. To be clear, though, I am very much against sacrifice bunting in that situation. I will say it would be critical there if Dan did call for a sacrifice bunt in that spot. I think that's a terrible decision. That is one that I would rip apart if it was the case. But my gut tells me, and again, maybe something different. Let me know in the comments if Dan said something different there. But I think that was just a matter of Polanco deciding and thinking that he could get a bunt down, probably for a base hit in that spot. So didn't like that. Polanco was seeing the ball well off Severino. Would have rather had him try to put one in the gap. But, if he gets it down and then Urshela throws it away, we're celebrating it, right? So sometimes it's a matter of the result there. But I did not like the decision. But then Polanco goes deep off Leclerc in the bottom of the 8th to dead center field on a cool night, right? Roof is closed in the 50s in Seattle. So powerful stuff there to go deep to center field on opening night. June, July, when it warms up, the ball flies a little bit, but to do that in April, like I said, I'm pretty much on the train. I think Polanco's going to have a solid year. The defense will be a question, but I think with the bat, I'm kind of sold on Jorge Polanco having a good year. We'll see. I've been wrong plenty of times, so we'll see what happens there. Rowdy Tellez, tough game, 0-for-3, a couple strikeouts. Ryan Bliss, 0-for-2 with 2 walks, stolen base. I thought Bliss played very well defensively. I was a little bit around the arm strength. It looked good. He made a couple really nice plays. I thought Ryan Bliss had a really nice game tonight. The 2 walks were huge. Both were leadoff walks for an inning. Guy making his, not his major league debut, but his opening day debut, if you want to call it that. Definitely could have tried to do a little too much. He didn't. Obviously out at home on that play, but I think that's just a tough one. The foot just didn't get down. Maybe you slide a little earlier there. I don't know. I'm not a baseball coach. You guys can let me know if you are in the comments down below, and if Bliss could have done anything different on the slide. I mean, maybe there is something there where he's just got to keep the leg down a little bit, but I think more matter of bad luck and a heads up play though from second base to see that by Ryan Bliss. And to recognize it was a live ball and to keep going. So like I said, I end the 2 walks. I was impressed with Bliss. We want to see some hits, got to see the bat to ball. But overall, I thought Bliss played well. Good to see. Bliss is a huge X factor for this team at second base, because that's been a position that we've talked about all offseason, needing upgrades on. And if Ryan Bliss can provide some value there defensively and offensively, that's a huge boost for this team, this season to maybe have an answer that was internal that we weren't too sure about. So a nice game from Bliss on his season debut. And then obviously season debut, his first opening day, everybody's season debut. And then JP 0-for-2 with a walk and a run scored. Nice play to finish it off there as well. I do prefer JP at the bottom of the order. I think it's nice to have him down there, a guy that's going to work the count, can go deep occasionally, put bat to ball. And I think it'll be nice to turn the lineup over as opposed to having JP at the top of the lineup. So I do think he works better in that 9 spot. But Mariners 1-0. World Series, here we come, right? 162-0, definitely on the table. But hey, they all count for one, right? Like, you do have to get them. The game in April matters as much as the game in September. They're going to lose games. They're going to win games. The old adage, every team wins 60, every team loses 60, right? The Mariners are going to lose games. Don't freak out if they do. They're probably going to have a devastating loss at some point where they're up 7-0 and they blow the lead. I say it every year. You just hope that it balances out. There's going to be games where they're down 7-0 and they come back and win. Tonight was a game that probably looked like a loss. You could make a case they kind of stole one tonight. The A's were 2 outs away from turning it over to one of the best relievers in baseball. Probably lights out if they do that, and the Mariners stole one and got the win against them tonight. So, they count. That's one in the books for the Seattle Mariners. Keep it going, and let's see what this season can have. Certainly a fun start. I will take games, though, with a little bit less stress for the rest of the 161. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow night for the post-game recap. Take care, everybody. And as always, go Mariners. Peace.